you got your son, but you
Mhm.
climb all the way up to vice president in
Mhm.
corporate America. That's no small feat.
Working the full-time job, for my master's, I took a weekend master's program. So I was going to classes from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday nights and then all day on Saturday. It was a lot, but I didn't see any other option. I was a single mom, and I was like, I am not gonna allow my son to be a statistic. I knew that being a single mom, being a Black single mom, automatically put him in a category where he wasn't supposed to graduate. You know, he was supposed to have issues. We were supposed to have this life. And I was like, not on my watch. It's just not going to happen.
For centuries, people have left their homes, friends, and loved ones with their goals in mind and their dreams in heart, searching for the American dream. What we don't know is the journey behind these stories. So come along with me as we explore and bring light to their stories on my journey to America.
Welcome back to this channel. Welcome back to this channel. And as promised, we always promise to deliver some of the best stories of on this channel on my journey to America. And today we have the one and only Keisha Pinnock. Let me just read you some things about her. It's too much to read, but I'm gonna give you guys a little smith. So Keisha has a master's in accounting of Nova Southeast University.
Mm-hmm.
She holds up bachelor's in health administration, kind of where I did my thing as well too. She also have a women's entrepreneurship certificate, right?
Yes.
Listen to these leadership role, guys. Listen to these. Listen to these leadership role. Owner and CEO, we're going to get into that, right? At
Mm-hmm.
SCV, Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer, Chief Compliance Officer / Privacy Officer, Chief Compliance Officer, Vice President, Medicare Compliance / Medicare Compliance Officer. And I'm going to read a little snippets. She's a seasoned healthcare industry leader, serving as a founder and CEO of this
It's Keep, yes, Keep.
Keep Consulting and Boutique firm specializing in healthcare. And I'm passionate about healthcare.
Yes.
So we want to hear more about that. Consulting with a background as a senior healthcare executive. That's no small feat.
Mhm.
You also bring extensive expertise to leadership, compliance, audit, privacy, risk, and quality functions, and the list goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Keisha Pinnock.
Hello, hello.
How you been, Keisha?
I am doing well. Thank you. I appreciate the introduction.
When I was reading your email, reading your bio, and that's not even all of it. Keisha, you have done a lot in your young life.
This is just age is just a number, right? But
And we knew that you recently launched where you're the owner and CEO of your own thing. But let us go back because where this all started. First of all, let's talk about this drive for all these accomplishments.
right. So I have to say, similar to some former guests, as well as most people who come from Jamaica or just any other country coming into the United States. I think we all come with the expectation that we are going to do something better, but with our lives. But my mom was a educator, a teacher from back in Jamaica, and so growing up, it was education was always very important, and it was always stressed, about academics and making sure that, you went to school and that you got the good grades. And when we came here, going through, the education system here. So that's the education part. But for me, I have just always been very competitive with myself, always trying to do something better and more than I had before. And it's just a natural drive that I've always had. So I didn't need the external influence to say, Keisha, go for this. I was always thinking about what's next.
Okay, and where in Jamaica this started? Where in Jamaica you're from?
Okay, so I was born in Mandeville, and
Mandeville.
yes, yes, sir. And then, but I left there when I was two,
Yeah.
and we lived in Ocho Rios. So I lived in Ocho Rios until we left in the 80s. And so my mom was a teacher at Ocho Rios Primary. My dad was a minister, so I'm a PK.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, so it started there. And so I went to Ocho Rios Primary and then only completed first form at York Castle. So
So you went to York.
I went to York Castle. So I after doing that, I came here to the United States. I didn't know I was moving. I thought we were just coming on vacation. So I didn't get the usual getting to say bye to everyone because I assumed we were coming on vacation and then I would be going back to do second form. But as life would have it, we moved. And so that was very challenging for me coming into the United States and just getting acclimated, with the kids in, I guess the equivalent here is junior high school. So.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I never knew your dad was a pastor. Okay.
Mhm.
We know when you have parents like that, one an educator and one a pastor, the pressure to do well. How was that for you? How did you handle that?
Yes. So, fortunately, I was always kind of a bookworm, right? I really enjoyed studying, so nobody really had to kind of force that on me. And, school actually came relatively easy for me. In Ocho Rios, when I was in primary school, I was usually either first or second in most of my classes. And I was just very much inclined to read and study, and I was always just fascinated by knowledge. That I think that was it. So the pressure there came from just the you having a mom as a teacher in a local school, right? It's just like you can't have a mom who's a teacher and getting F's, right?
That's not the
And
thing.
so, yeah, so that was not allowed. And fortunately, my mom was very nurturing that way. And so she was always willing to take the time to really educate us and to help us with maybe more complex things. And what I would do is when I left primary school, I would go to her secondary college because at that time they had just started implementing the two schedules. So they had the morning schedule and afternoon. So she would teach the afternoon and I would just walk from my school down to her school. So what I would do is while she was teaching, I was picking up on a lot of what she was teaching her students. So I was just expanding myself and really just getting the extra knowledge. So I was working at some point, I started, even though I was maybe in fifth or sixth grade, I was learning what, first and second form students were doing. And so I started, I think I just became a little bit more knowledgeable than some of my peers that way.
Wow. So you were ahead of the curve.
Yes, sir.
Wow. How many siblings?
I have, let's see, I have two that so I have my sister who's older, and I have a younger sibling through different mom, but my sister and I are same parents, and my brother is with a different mom, same dad.
Okay, okay. At what age did you came to America?
I came when I was 11.
11.
Yes, yes.
Wow. So you had a short stint.
I had a short stint. I still feel as if I have lost a little of the childhood being in Jamaica. I miss that. But I feel in life that nothing happens without purpose, right? And so for me, even though I've lost the time in Jamaica, but fortunately coming into the United States, you know, we always were surrounded by Jamaicans. You know, the churches we went to were Jamaican. We have a lot of Jamaican friends, and even people who we knew from Jamaica that moved to the United States and still lived in or similar area. We were able to retain that friendship. So I may have lost the country when I was younger, but I certainly didn't lose the culture.
Wow.
Mhm.
I want to give you credit for an innuendo. You don't mention it, but it was said. You pass common entrance at about age 10.
Correct.
Take a
Correct.
bow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
I did.
for those that are watching, common entrance is that exam that we all have to do to go to high school. You don't just go to high school like here in America. And
True.
that exam is a big exam. I've
It
seen
is.
kids cried.
Yes.
And you went at age 10.
Correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Because when you came here now, you went back to junior high.
Yeah, so I started junior high here was I started in eighth grade. So at 11, I started in eighth, the equivalent here, so eighth grade, which when I initially came, they were trying to put me back to seventh grade. But then when we had our transcripts, and I think they saw that pretty much for sixth grade, like I said, I came in first in all my subjects, I think except like one or two.
Mhm.
And I think during the evaluation, they felt that I had a strong enough background there that they placed me in eighth grade. So so I still was able to continue without having to go back a form.
Okay, all right. Which year did you came here?
I came in 87.
87.
Yeah, so that tells you that it has been a long time, and this is not youthful grace here. This is just
Yes.
good genes, I suppose.
You look like you're in your 20s. So come on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which state did you came to?
So I initially I spent most of my life in Florida, and specifically in Miami. In fact, that's
Fortunate.
yeah, so I
You're
was
cold.
yeah, yeah. So I was in Miami all this time, and if anyone who knows Miami, we know that one, it's a melting pot of sorts, but definitely lots of Jamaicans, lots of people from the islands living there. So it's a nice mixture.
On the point of Miami, I'm gonna dissect a little. I saw where they opened a juicy beef, the first ever in the country, and it is
Mhm.
sold out.
Yes,
They
I
had
am
to,
not surprised
they
because
had to close
yeah,
because they have no patty.
yeah. I'm not surprised because they also have Tasty down there too, and lots of excuse me, lots of different Jamaican restaurants and authentic Jamaican restaurants. So you know, if
Wow.
you like that, you're not missing it. I live now in Atlanta, and so it's a little bit different. Not
Yeah.
as I haven't quite found the island spots yet, but you know, it's definitely when I go back to Miami, I have no problems with finding my Jamaican food.
Wow. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about now that the culture shock when you came
Mm.
here. What was that like for living here with Keisha?
Oh my goodness, it was horrific. When I tell you that it horrific and traumatic um,
Mm,
for me because it was just a different environment. I spoke differently, and you know, kids are not necessarily very accommodating of differences, right? And so when I came here, my language, like the difference between saying three and tree, and you know when you're counting, and even just the way that writing, right? Because there's the English way, there's the American English way of spelling things, and then there is the British English, which is what Jamaicans are used to. So even things like spelling, you know, if you're writing a check, right? You would spell it here is Check, but
Hey,
Jamaica is Cheque. So I used to get back my papers and I'm wondering, you know, how come I have all these marks on there? And you know, again, a little bit of ego goes with that because you don't quite understand why your things are getting marked, and then you start realizing there's a difference in the way English. So it took me, I would say that you know, probably for the first couple months, honestly, I cried every time that I went to school, just because I didn't necessarily know how to express just how odd I guess I felt, and I
yeah.
didn't have any friends, so you know I had to meet new friends, and so that was kind of challenging for me. And you know, fortunately, I eventually, you know, made friends, and I was always doing well academically. But I was just I felt a little bit lonely because it was a new country, new school, new friends, new way of doing things. And also in Jamaica, you're used to wearing your uniforms. Here, you know, my parents weren't necessarily affluent in terms of, you know, monetary wealth. And so, you know, I was wearing, you know, basic things. It seemed like an elevation for me coming from Jamaica, but within the United States, it was, I guess, very basic. So, you know, as kids, you start comparing what you're wearing to what other people are wearing. And so sometimes that does have an effect. So I would say that for the first few months, it was very challenging for me.
And you came in back then. It's not like you had we had communication in Jamaica like,
Correct.
where you could just take up a phone and call. So all your
Yes.
friends that you left back home, you miss them dearly.
Correct, correct. And that was just it. It was just a cutting off. And, you know, if you had time to plan, you could get phone numbers. And, you know, back then it's just like you were very fortunate if you had phones. But even just being able to write letters, right? You know, that would have been nice to be able to have like some pen pals or something. But because I didn't know I was leaving, I
Mm.
didn't take the time to do any of that. So I literally was cut off from my life in Jamaica and having to start a whole new life in a whole new country. So it was very challenging for me initially.
Talk to us about, because you know in Jamaica, we only have Jamaicans that live here. Talk
Hmm.
to us about the different ethnicities, because here I met people from Jordan.
Yes,
Here I met my neighbor is from Macedonia. We talk all the time.
yes,
How was that for you when you met someone from Africa or
y-
you met someone from Mexico? How was that for you?
yes. So I think here I would say that the probably the three, maybe four groups that we had in terms of school is that a large in the area I went to, we had Black Americans, and we had some folks from the Caribbean. You know, we had a few Jamaicans and Haitians primarily. We had a huge Hispanic population, and then we had whites, right? So even though Jamaica is sort of a mixture of, you know, colors and cultures, but there are definite differences, right? And so they back then you had little cliques because, you know, children, that's I think that's what they're used to. They associate with people that are their own. So we had, you know, little groups of, you know, Black Americans. We had little groups where you had, you know, folks from the islands. And you know, unfortunately, I mean, as adults, we know more, but, you know, back then there was a big difference between being a Jamaican versus a Haitian. And so, you know, the Jamaicans had their own little clique, Haitians had their own little clique. And of course, Hispanics and whites kind of, you know, hung out together. And so I didn't really find a lot of Jamaicans. I was
Mhm.
actually embraced more. I was in a lot of honors classes, and so I had more, I would say, Blacks and maybe whites, and then maybe sprinkling of the Caribbeans and Hispanics in my classes.
What was your first reaction hearing that somebody speaks Spanish fluently?
Well, it's interesting because my sister is 4 years older than I am. So I will say I am a little bit of an undercover nerd. Okay. So when
Hmm.
I was always, like I said, fascinated by knowledge. So when I was younger, I would take my sister's textbooks, and there were two in particular. I always knew I wanted to be in business. There was just something about the idea of getting dressed up in suits that I was very fascinated by. And then she also had Spanish books. And so I literally taught myself how to speak Spanish through listening to her in terms of doing her homework and reciting, but then taking
Hmm.
her actual books. So I knew how to count in Spanish. I knew how to say little phrases in Spanish. And when I came here, one of my electives was Spanish because, and actually in Jamaica in first form, I also took Spanish as one of my electives. So by the time I came here, I knew enough Spanish, and as I went through both my junior high and high school, I actually got up to the Spanish level where the class that actual Spanish speakers speak
Hmm.
took those classes. So my Spanish eventually came, very fluent. It's semi-fluent now, but for years, especially living in Miami, it was always something that came in very handy. I can read it very well, speak it decently, and certainly write it as well. So, but it was different actually just having people who did not speak, in some cases, not a lot of English, or just having very thick accents. And sometimes, you're not sure if someone is saying something, if they're saying something about you, or, so that was different.
Yeah, because you know when they realize that you understand it,
Hmm.
they respect you more
Yes, yes.
because they know that I had said something about him yesterday. Wonder if did he understand? Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yes,
because I
that,
was
that
in
is
that
true.
environment in San Diego. So I was training a lot of Mexican, and all they speak is Spanish. And
Hmm.
it's amazing how they hear, you keep hearing it, then you
Yes.
understand it, then you begin to speak it.
Yeah, exactly,
You know?
exactly. So yeah,
Okay.
so it's not it's nice, and over the years I certainly have an eclectic mix of friends. So I still have friends who speak Spanish, and I think it's nice to know an additional language if you choose to. But I always say that Patois is like my first language. Patois and of course English, but yeah, it's nice to have the Spanish as well.
So, but I know now, like
Mhm.
whenever I speak patois now, people are fascinated
Oh
by
yes.
it. Was it like that back then?
No, no, it
Okay.
was not. It definitely was not. And like I said, I think kids they're not necessarily used to patois. They may be a little bit more acclimated to Spanish.
Mhm.
But patois, and again, one of the challenges with patois is because people think it's not really a language, is per se a broken dialect. So nobody really tries to learn how to speak patois because it just doesn't, I guess it's underrated. Whether or not it should be or not is probably a
Yeah,
whole nother discussion. But yeah, kids were not very happy, the very strong Jamaican accent that I had back then. You had the little snickering, or
yeah,
people laughing. And so that did not help a lot with your self-esteem, right? And I was always a little bit more introverted. I was more happier being around my books than I was with people
yeah,
back then. So that was challenging.
yeah. Because I said no everywhere. I love your accent.
Yes, of
That's
course.
all
Oh
you hear
goodness.
now, right?
Yes.
That's all you hear.
Yes, for
I've
sure.
interviewed someone from Uganda, Liberia, and so on, and they have rough upbringings, rough
Right.
upbringings. So when they came here, they appreciate the contrast.
Yes.
What are some of the contrasts for you though, you know, when you
In,
came here versus Jamaica?
right.
In anything.
I will say maybe just from the positive side is that like I would say like my dad, when he came a couple years before we did, and so back in Jamaica, his main thing was being a pastor, and he also ran a pharmacy in Ocho Rios. And so, when he came here, I think, having access to other types of jobs, right, what was very helpful. Initially, for my mom, I think maybe just challenging because I think it's just, what most women do when they come here, they have sort of the living assistant, where they're helping other people. And yes, they're making decent money. I'm not sure that I have as much appreciation for it now as an adult that I did as a child. I just, figured, my mom had a job and she was doing it, but it took them away from us, right? So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
just,
yeah.
where my mom was a teacher and I was used to her being home every day. When you're in a living environment, it's different. You're living with someone else's family and helping, whether it's children or an elderly person. And so you're kind of reduced to seeing, your parents on the weekend or having conversations with them like about, schooling, anything school related via the phone. So I would say that while it creates, economically, it is very helpful. As a child, I don't think I would have appreciated it just because it took my mom away. And,
Mm.
and I saw my dad having to work so much longer hours, and so, as children, we were left alone in, for long periods of time, even though we came home from school. I think my dad was very, that's the one thing I really have to give him credit for, is that whatever job he had, he always took the time to make sure that he came and got us from school and made sure that we made it home safely. Even if he had to, eat his lunch on the run or whatever, our safety was really important. And the few times that we had to walk home or take a school bus, I would say that it was really far in between. So,
Mm.
it provided from an economic perspective, like I said, it enhanced it. But from a time perspective and a family perspective, I kind of saw like our family kind of break apart a little bit just because there wasn't time for all of us to be in the same room at the same time.
It's so important that you mentioned that because when we think of the idea of someone migrating to America,
Mm-hmm.
we often think of this instant step forward, right?
Very true.
But your parents took a step back. I took a big step back.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it is interesting. What do you say when people think like that? That oh, you left Jamaica or wherever, so you took a step forward. And I'm sure people that have to seek asylum and stuff like that,
Right.
they take a step forward when they came here.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
for most of us, like I was in the military and your dad had a business and stuff like he took a step back.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yes.
do you say to people that things like the automatic step when you come into foreign land is a step forward?
Right. The challenge here is that in the business, and in the workplace, it's just that everything is driven by a paper, your resume. And unfortunately, I don't, it's my personal experience. I don't think that the US gives enough credit to people's experience from other countries because somehow they undermine the experience that you have because it wasn't in a US business, right? So like you said, you could have been in the army and, have reached a certain level or had your own business. But coming to the country, it is just, you are literally starting from scratch. And so I would say that it is not just the pie in sky. You have to be willing to start from scratch. That's unfortunately, that's the way this country works. And as you can see, even now with immigration laws, there is such a huge disconnect between those who are supportive of immigrants coming into the country and those who aren't. We are known, I think, universally, in most cases, most immigrants are coming in because they want a better life and they're willing to work for it. I think that it's just sometimes sad that they have to start in I would say the dirtiest and the lowest of places in order to prove themselves to the US in terms of what your capabilities are. And I think that will continue to be a challenge. It doesn't mean that we're not smart. And I think that's the only encouragement that I would have to say for someone coming here is that, yes, you may have to start over in certain places, but use that same drive, the same dedication that you had before that got you to a certain level. I think you still have to apply that now. Don't just assume that because you've made it in Jamaica that it's just easy to just make it here, but it is possible. And
Of course.
yeah, it is possible. I think that we have a natural resilience and a natural charm. And I will say that in the workplace, I found I think that people do like Jamaicans. We carry that island spirit with us. We have a natural positivity for the most part, and I think that that's what makes us amazing caretakers in the healthcare field. I think it's what makes us great in business because we get along with people very well.
Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
Because where I work, where I used to work, the fact that I'm a Jamaican, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
People are in awe when you say you're from Jamaica. Like
Yes.
literally in awe when you say
Yes.
you're Jamaican. You know what I mean? When you say
It's
you're
true.
Jamaican.
Yes.
How was high school? Because obviously you ran through junior high. That was middle school, right?
Right. So that's the equivalent, the middle school. So high school was actually better. Better because by this time, I had made friends and a lot of those friends went to the same high school. And in high school, I was like I said, is still in a lot of the honors and advanced classes. So that was something that just kind of went along. Like I said, I was a good student that way, in terms of, getting the work done and, reading. And, for me, school, some people have challenges with school. I will say that I really wasn't one of them, like when it comes to the academic side of things.
Mhm.
But I suppose, again, a part of that is probably because I grew up with an educator. It just seemed like the natural things to do. And so for me, high school was not bad. I graduated like in the top 4% of my school, and did honors, and it wasn't as bad. And I actually had a more diverse group of friends, and actually
Oh,
started having more friends that looked like me and were like me. So I appreciated that.
and then so when you left high school, you went straight to college?
Yeah, so when I left high school, so I actually had a couple scholarships, right? So when I was in high school, I was doing sort of a joint program because I had already, I think by 11th grade, the end of 11th grade, if I'm not mistaken, I had already met most of the requirements to graduate. So I had most of my credits. So I had 12th grade, there were some classes that you just had to take as a senior. So I was actually doing a dual enrollment program with the University of Miami. They had a program that they would allow certain seniors, if you had good grades, you could do a program with them. So I was doing that. And so when I graduated from high school, I had applied to, I think, 2 or 3 universities, and I got full scholarships for tuition, but my parents couldn't afford the room and board that it would take in order to get me into those programs. So I had to give up those scholarships, which obviously was disappointing. But what I decided to do was to do a 2-year program at a local community college. So I did Miami-Dade Community College, and I had a full scholarship there. And it was local, so I could drive back and forth. My dad, gave me his old car, and so, I was driving to school for the first couple years. And then after that, I transferred to university. So it was cheaper, and then I was able to get loans to finish my bachelor's at an actual university. And so that's what I did.
You said you always like business,
Mm-hmm.
but you did your bachelor's in health administration.
Right.
Talk to
So,
us about that.
so the interesting thing. So when I was after I graduated high school, I started working, and one of my, I think probably the second job I had was working for a doctor's office. And I was doing a lot of more administrative tasks, helping the doctors with getting patients prepped, just like with blood pressures and things like that, making sure I checked them in. And one of my first mentors that I had was a very just professional woman that was originally from Haiti, but she'd been living here for a very long time. And she spotted the potential. And I kept saying to her that, what I wanted to do was business administration. And she told me, which was the first time I'd ever heard about it, she said that, well, since you're in healthcare, there's a new program that's called healthcare administration. So it is taking the business aspects, of a typical business, but then applying it in healthcare specifically. So similar courses, except that you're looking at healthcare operations, you're looking at healthcare finance, and all of those things that allows a healthcare business to run. And so I switched over to healthcare administration. And so that's kind of how I ended up getting my bachelor's there.
Okay. And then you did your master's in accounting.
Right. So
Because it seemed to me that the women's entrepreneurship certificate came last.
it did. It did.
All right, so because that's interesting because we know what your passion was.
Yes, yes. So here's the thing, in between, so when I was in high school as well, so I think I would say most people that I've met, they either like math or they like writing, right? I actually liked both. So when I was in high school, I actually took accounting 1 and 2, really enjoyed the program, but I was also doing well in, sort of my English classes. So when I did my healthcare program, there's a healthcare finance component of that. And I really, again, did very well in that. When I was doing my courses at the community college, I also took accounting. So it just was just lingering over me. And in between all of that, before I actually moved over to the university for my undergrad, my bachelor's, I had a child, right? So that changed things a little bit for me. And so I was now a mom. But for me, it was just not stopping. If anything, it gave me even more motivation because I now had this child who was dependent on me, right? And I wanted to make sure that I could provide in every way possible, not just economically, but also being there. So that happened right before I enrolled in my program for my bachelor's. And after I was, so that changed things a little bit. But I was for me it was I felt it was almost like a little bit of a step back just because, you know, I was in an environment, I'm a PK, remember? And so, you know, you have all these standards and, you know,
Yep.
I have all my friends that are, you know, kind of taking off and, you know, going to college and, you know, or doing their thing and they're a little bit ahead. I had to take, I think I took about 6 months before starting my bachelor's program.
Wow.
And again, you know, I have to give my mom a lot of credit because, you know, I was very hard on myself during that time. And, you know, I remember her saying that, you know, if you fall down, you get back up. And there is, you know, nothing wrong. Like we're basically we're procreators. And it's just
Yep.
like, and if you are here and you have this child, he's supposed to be here. And so you just
Part of
have
the
to stay
journey.
focused. Yes, he's part of the journey. And so now it just gives you that added motivation, you know, of being a mom and responsible for a little person. And it's
Mhm.
just like, you know, now is even more time for you to stay focused. And so that's exactly what I did. And I decided I got my bachelor's and, you know, was also working on my career. I was growing in my career. And then I decided to get my master's in accounting. And the reason for that was I decided that I wanted to be a chief financial officer. That was my thing. I'm going to take this business background. I was working for someone, again, a vice president in
We'll
the
come to that. Yeah.
yes. And so I was just like, okay, I love, you know, accounting. I'm very analytical. And, you know, I was doing a lot in terms of working with this VP. I was doing so much in terms of numbers, you know, the statistics and all of those things. And again, it just came naturally. And I decided, hey, I am going to go the CFO route. So that was the reason for getting the master's in accounting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Big thing in America, man.
You have
Because
to. We have to,
we
like they say,
stand
we're little, but we Talawa. So
like
yeah.
about tell talk to us though about how did you find balance? Because you got your son, but you
Mhm,
climb all the way up to vice president in
mhm.
corporate America. That's no small feat.
No, and I will say that I did not have balance. You know, during
Mm.
those times, I honestly didn't. I was, you know, working on my master's, and so what I decided early on was I wanted to make sure that I was there during the week with my son. To make sure I was, you know, whatever extracurricular activities that I could be a part of, I wanted to be there. And so what I was doing. I was working the full-time job. For my master's, I took a weekend master's program. So I was going to classes from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday nights and then all day on Saturday.
How
And
old was your son at this time?
I think my son was, goodness, I think he was probably about 7, maybe. Yeah, 7 or 8. Yes.
You realize that you're a superwoman, right?
Oh, listen, I just had to do what I had to do. I
7 masters plus extracurricular activity.
correct, correct. So when I tell you there were days that I was driving, and not to mention driving to class, and I was so exhausted that if I had 15 minutes before class, I literally would sleep in my car for those 15 minutes just to kind of give me a little extra pep, you know, when I got into my class for the next day. And on Saturday mornings, always had my coffee in hand till I actually got the nickname Coffee Girl because I was the I was the one walking in every morning with, you know, bright on Saturday morning with my coffee because you know, I just I needed it to kind of, at least I thought I needed it back then, to kind of power me through the day. And you know, you're dealing with taxation and financial accounting and this and that, and you know, it was a lot. But I didn't see any other option. I was a single mom, and I was like, I am not going to allow my son to be a statistic. I knew that, being a single mom, being a Black single mom, automatically put him in a category where he wasn't supposed to graduate. You know, he was supposed to have issues. We were supposed to have this life. And I was like, not on my watch. It's just not going to happen.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you became vice president, right?
After, so I was working
Yeah,
for a vice
after.
president. Yeah. So after I got the master's in accounting, I actually decided to do work as an auditor for public accounting firms. So I was working for companies that had to report to the SEC and doing auditing. I was kind of the for the auditing industry, I was sort of the older version. And even though I was still young, but I was older than some of the folks who, again, started at the bottom. But, you know, this is why I say that sometimes starting at the bottom is not a bad thing, because you get to show people your experience. And I think there were 12 people who started in that initial round or class that I started. And I was the only one that got promoted the next year. Because I was, again, just very determined. And then that led to other positions in other healthcare systems, big systems
I
within
know
Miami.
the list is
Yeah. And
long.
so, yeah, it is long. And then, like I said, over time, it led to, my first vice president role. And, by then, my son was, getting older. I think when I got my vice president role, I think he had probably just finished middle school, was about to go to high school. And, and so, again, sometimes I have been very blessed that the right people have been able to see the work that I've done and the contribution that I've made to the organization. I am not a very public person. I'm not very the person who toots my own horn. And so this conversation is actually probably very interesting, because I don't even think most people realize the professional accomplishments, just because it's not something that I go talking about.
I'm going to talk about it again. Leadership auditing, fraud, waste, and abuse detection, compliance, due diligence reviews for mergers and acquisition. These are stuff that you do in Keisha.
Yes.
Right? Compliance program effectiveness. You put these stuff together. Medicare compliance support, Medicare annual enrollment period readiness. And the list goes on and on and on.
Yes, yes. It's been quite a ride.
You know, how did you dealt with the challenge of not looking like some other people?
Yes.
And to propel yourself based on your work. How did you balance that? How did you deal with that?
Right. I have always had an understanding as to who I was. I think that knowledge of self, it is very important. And for me, my Jamaican heritage, my Jamaican culture has always been very important to me, because I could never put that aside, because it is who I am. It's who my parents are. It's who my grandparents are. And so for me, that was always very important. And there are lots of, in fact, most of my positions, I have been the only Black person in the room, only Black executive, the only Black senior vice president. I have been in places where, and not because they're not intelligent Black women and men out there, but because they've not been given the opportunity to showcase what they're doing. And so for me, I've always kind of felt the personal responsibility that if I can hire someone who looks like me and that is intelligent and that is more than capable to do the job, I'm going to do it, because I think diversity in the workplace is very important. We live in a diverse society. We have individuals who are going through and, trying to get to the next level. And sometimes all it takes is just for one person to reach out the hand and say, hey, I will help you. And so for me, that's where mentorship comes in for me. I am very supportive of mentoring young women in the business, in my workplace, and some who have never worked with me, just because I think that we have so much to offer. And it's a responsibility that I feel that I have to be able to give back.
Wow. Are you self-actualized?
I wouldn't say that.
Ki-
I'm getting there. I will say that I am getting there. And I do think that it is important to keep working on yourself, right? And just the same way that we can give ourselves the accolades, I think that where we have areas of improvement, I do think that we have our personal responsibility to try to address those things. And so I would say that, am I, more actualized than I was maybe 3 years ago, 5 years ago? Absolutely. Am I going to stop that journey? Absolutely not.
Keisha, you came up in a time when there was no social media,
Mm-hmm.
no distraction. What do you say to young Black girls like you that have so much potential, and, and you see them wa wasting away on social media? Because what they don't realize is, like, this time you cannot get it back.
No.
And time is more valuable than money, because you can get more money, but you can't get more time.
It's true.
And you need time to get that money. So fortunately for you, you came up when you never had to deal with those sort of distraction. What do you say to young Black girls, especially the one them that migrating from Jamaica that come to this country?
Right. So, I would say, first of all, I said technology has its place, and sometimes, improvements is good. It gives you the
100%.
opportunity, right? The opportunity to interact with other people as well. And I would just say that, the distractions from social media, it is as if you are putting your purpose on hold, a lot of times for people you don't even know. Right. And so I think it is about understanding, first of all, it's understanding what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Because it's impossible to spend 6 hours on social media and still be able to, whether it is you're studying or you have other goals or you're working, that level of distraction, it is not conducive to growth unless your goal is to become, your only job is to be a social media influencer. Then you may have, some other things to think about, and that may be your forum. But if you are truly in a space where you're trying to develop yourself and accomplish your goals, you have to look at social media as something that is nice to have, but you are in control of it. I think what I see nowadays is that social media controls us. We get up in the morning, before we even get out the bed, we are checking to see, if someone liked our post or what is happening in the real world. And I think you have to go inside and start paying attention to your life. Like, what is my, I heard the term, what is my North Star? What is it specifically that I'm trying to accomplish? What are the steps that I need to do to accomplish those things? And am I working diligently towards those things, or am I putting them off? And I really firmly believe that when you don't act on purpose, it is as if you are disrespecting the gift of life that God has given to you. And so, without sounding too religious, I really do think that we have again, the obligation to be able to live a life that is intentional, and that intentional life cannot occur unless you're working every day on the things that are going to make you a better person.
Wow, well said. Because what most people don't realize that they're addicted to it.
Yes, yes.
They don't. There's this book by Anna Lenke.
Mm-hmm.
She's a doctor. It's called Dopamine Nation.
Yes, yes. Excellent book, by the way.
You read that book?
Yes, yes,
Okay, girl.
yes.
That's a great book. And the reward of social
Mhm,
is like, as you said, as they get up in the bed, first thing, you know what I
mhm.
mean? Because they're addicted, and the sad thing, they don't even realize that
That
they're
is it.
addicted, that
It is
they're,
a drug. It is like a drug. And I think the thing is because we think, oh, we're not actually, taking cocaine or some other drug that is not harmful. But the loss in productivity that people have, and even just our brains are basically used to repetition. What
Mhm.
you repeat is what you start manifesting. And so if you are exercising, this is why there are reps in exercise programs, right? And this is why there's consistency when you're trying to do things that's going to make your life better.
Yeah,
And it's the same thing. If every day you're spending hours and hours, your brain is now being trained that social media is what I need to do. I don't need to do my work. I don't need to focus on my goals. The important thing for my day is to be able to focus on social media. And before you know it, months go by and you have not accomplished anything. And my thought process is that if you're not growing, you're dying. You are never staying the same. And so time is passing you by. And people who are accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish, you're having to sit on the sidelines and watching them have the life that you should be having. So I really do think that, again, it's a blessing and a curse. In
yes.
yes, it
Because
is.
there's nothing bad with it. You could add,
No.
you know, but wow, you know that book, Dopamine
Yeah,
Nation.
yeah, listen,
You're a
yes.
true star. Keisha, not everybody knows that book. You're the first person I've mentioned about that book. I said that's
Yes,
a great book. That's really a good book. Okay, let's dive into it because we want to wrap up. Talk
yes.
to me about Keep your business now.
Keep
Keep
consulting.
Consulting. Yes, talk
Yeah.
to us about it. Because you made it to the top in corporate. We can say that. Then you divert now, because we always know that this was the goal, right? To be at
Right.
the top.
Yes.
Talk to us about now. What is Keep Consulting?
So Keep Consulting, I started in 2014, and it is really a healthcare consulting firm that allows me to utilize all the experience I've gathered throughout the years to be able to help healthcare organizations to be effective in leadership, in strategy, in compliance, in operations, and just navigating the regulatory nuances that they have to go through. And the reason why I like the consulting side, as a chief compliance officer, there are certain rules around my ability to be engaged in operational functions. There's usually, again, a conflict of interest. If I'm assessing operations, I can actually implement the rules that your operational folks are having to deal with. And so for consulting, I get to just basically mix all of that together. And so I can come in for compliance, but because I am a consultant, I don't have some of the nuances that your chief compliance officer has. So if I come in to do a compliance assessment and I see that you have financial issues or the reporting that you've given me, there are issues with that, I can make recommendations as to how to fix it, but I can also help you to fix it specifically. So I love the consulting arm. And even though I've held positions where I've been the chief compliance officer or senior vice president for companies while holding my company, I would say over since 2018, I have just been fully dedicated to running my consulting firm, and I quite enjoy it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Little girl from Jamaica.
Listen.
Talk to us about working with Fortune 500 company.
You know, I would say bigger environment, as my last actual job as an employee, I worked as a senior vice president I was over compliance, I was the chief audit executive, and I also oversaw their IT security. And that position came about as part of an acquisition. And so I was working with teams in India, I was working with teams in the Philippines, I was working with teams in London, as well as the US. And, I have just been fortunate to be able to have the exposure. And sometimes you're learning things and you don't really know how in the future you're going to be able to utilize it. I will say that those environments really gave me the opportunity to use it all, right? And to help to support organizations in their growth and their development, as well as my professional growth. So that has been unique. And actually, seeing it on the flip side, as an auditor, I used to audit publicly traded companies, and then getting the chance to actually work for publicly traded companies, you can certainly appreciate some of the challenges that they have.
Congratulations again. These
Thank
are
you,
big
sir.
things, I
Yeah.
know you're into health and fitness.
For sure.
Talk to us
For
about
sure.
that. Where did that came from?
Yeah. So I would say, when you asked me earlier about
Before you go on, do you actually sell those juices?
yes, so I'm
Because
planning to launch that, right? So yes, so
need to
that is the
launch that.
question. Yes, that
You
is the
need to
question
launch.
I get all the time. So the brainchild that I'm working on, the new brand that I'm working on,
Yes.
is launching that actually in the next 30 days or so. It
Yes.
is just again focused on really plant-based health and wellness. And when we talked a little bit about balance before, I was working so hard. Like I've never had a 9 to 5 job. I was a mom. I was, a corporate employee. And when I tell you my hours did not end, and so many times I was just burnt out. I was overweight. I was burnt out. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I was addicted to coffee. And so in 2018, I would say it started in 2014, but then I was traveling back and forth and wasn't able to sustain the lifestyle. In 2018, I decided to walk away from my corporate job because I knew there was still a void there, and I needed to fill that and answer those questions for myself. A big part of that was my health. And I was just like, I'd seen, some things happening within my family. And I was just like, I didn't want that to be the future that I was looking at. And so I decided to be committed to my health and fitness goals. And, and I'm so very happy that I did
You're
that.
so
Yes.
committed.
Yeah. So now that I'm in Atlanta, what trying to focusing more on launching a health coaching side, as well as helping people with their health and wellness. And the goal here is, for moms or just executives like myself who may want to do something for their health, but may not necessarily have the time, with food planning or preparing their meals. I'd like to be able to help them with kind of jump starting that, and helping with preparing meals for them, as well as coaching them on that journey.
Wow, I'm
Yeah.
all for that, because that's right up my alley. Anything in health and fitness.
Right.
I have two more questions for you before we wrap up.
Sure.
How long did it took for you to go back to Jamaica when
Oh,
you first
wow.
came here?
Yes, it took a while. It took probably, and I'm ashamed to say this, probably like 20 something years.
Come
And
on,
yes,
Keisha.
I know it was horrible. So, and to
20
be
plus
honest,
years.
yes, it took a long while. And the one of the reasons was even though my dad, to be honest, has been going down for years, but it was just never the right time. And then I didn't want to go by myself because I really didn't know Jamaica, right? It was just like I was
Because you
11
left
when
when you were
I left.
11.
you know, so, and I didn't really know. And I really, when I went, like, I wanted to like tour. And so when I went down for a cousin's wedding, and then I was just like, I honestly, I fell in love again with Jamaica. And I was just like, I have to keep coming. So I've tried to go as, you know, often as I can. And to be honest, there's really a part of me that really wants to just have a nice piece of land that I can actually grow some of my own fruits and vegetables, and be able to have, you know, more health and wellness type of events, you know, to kind of get people to just relax and slow down. I think Jamaica is while yes, there are lots of challenges being out there, but I think the premise for Jamaica is a very relaxed mindset, and that, you know, no problem man is really something that I think, you know, most people have. So I would like to be able to do that in the future, so stay tuned for that part as well.
Wow. You know, looking back at the journey, Keisha, you came here, you did well in school, always in the honors class, full scholarship. You climbed the top as a senior vice president, Fortune 500 companies. Looking back at the journey, what would you say to someone coming to America? Why should they come here?
So I think one of the reasons to come here is the opportunities, right? You know, when I was growing up, there were basically two job types for women. It was either being a nurse or being a teacher. That was it, right? And you know, having a woman that's an accountant is different. And I don't think I would have, not that there are not female accountants in Jamaica, but I would say that the opportunity to explore the things that are important to you that may be non-traditional, I would say that there's definitely a place for that, right? So that's one. I just think the opportunities for exploring, even just from an educational and personal perspective, are definitely there. And I would also say, just from, if you're planning to come, I bring the part of Jamaica with you. Don't plan on losing that, right? You know, the things that are important to Jamaicans, you know, we know how to work hard. We know how to balance that with a smile. Yes, there are days that are tough and challenging, but I don't know, we always knew how to make it work. And even if we had just little, like you know, there's that song that's called Little is Much When God is in It, but it is so true. I think that even if all you have is a pot, and you know how to, you know, cook your yam, and you have some ackee or whatever, or even if it's corned beef, I don't care. We know how to take small things and turn them into amazing things, and we are appreciative. So don't lose that side of who you are. Come with your drive, come with the hard work and determination, but don't lose the things that make you a Jamaican, right? I would say just keep that.
Wow. On that note, Keisha,
That's it.
I can't have nothing to say more after that. It
No,
was a
no,
pleasure. It was a pleasure. You really, you epitomizes greatness as it
thank
relates to
you.
someone coming here from Jamaica that have the drive, have ambition, and you really set the bar high where someone should follow, because we don't like to see when our people come here and get into trouble and get
Exactly.
sent back home. You know, so
Yes, it's true. And we
yeah,
need to support, you know, I think
yeah,
that's the other part, is to support each other, right? If
sure,
we
yeah,
are seeing, you know, or Jamaicans, you know, and if you can offer, I think it goes both ways. I think if we can offer advice, but also Jamaicans, we are proud. We think sometimes we know it all. I think
mhm,
sometimes we also have to be able to receive the constructive criticism if it's
yeah,
coming from a place of love. I
yeah,
think we have to, you know, have the constructive criticism and weigh it around with your personal goals.
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend.
No, thank you so much. And I just have to say, I'm very happy about, you know, this forum that you have. And for us to be able to share our journeys and you know what really has helped us. And you know, I think that what you're doing is fantastic. So happy to support, and I'm really glad that you decided to do this finally.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, take
God bless.
care.